Hey everyone, it's Shamrocked here with a boss guide for you. This is for Asaad. It's the last boss in Vortex Pinnacle. This boss can be quite tricky, especially on higher Tyrannical keys. It can also vary quite a bit depending on your composition and how much DPS your group has. Because of that, I actually have two versions of this fight, so I'm going to just play the first one, which was like a really nice smooth run where everybody did their part, everybody, we had good DPS. It was a really smooth fight, and I'm going to sort of narrate what I did and how the fight should go. And then I'm also just going to put a video at the end of another version of the fight where it was a little bit less smooth. The DPS wasn't as good, so the ads lived a little bit quicker, and the chain lightning targets weren't ideal. Just to show you, like, you can still do it for both variations. It's just a little bit harder when things don't always go your way. That being said, let's take a look at the talents before I get started. So you'll see it's actually just a still image on the screen. I had to pull up the talent calculator on the website. And the reason for this is because the WoW servers are currently down because of a DDoS attack or something. So I can't actually log in to record the talents on the screen. So I apologize for that. But okay, so here's the talents. I'll just go through super quickly because I can't even really mouse over. So on the left side of the tree, unfortunately, I have to have Curse Dispel and Poison Dispel because it is an Afflicted week. But if you were doing this fight on any other week with a different affix, you could probably use those points elsewhere. Most importantly to point out is that I have 2 points in Swirling Currents instead of Surging Shields, and that's just because having really nice big cloud bursts is really important for Asaad and Alteris and the first boss as well. And I think it's just going to give better value on a Tyrannical week in Vortex Pinnacle than Surging Shields. Second, I did spec into Totemic Recall and Creation Core. This is mostly for, pretty much only for Alteris. It could be used on the last boss as well, depending on how your cloud bursts kind of fall in place, but it's really for Alteris. If you feel like you don't need the extra cloud bursts to heal Alteris, then once again, those points could be used elsewhere. Because it is a Tyrannical week, I don't have any extra CC other than Cap Totem and Wind Shear, which is the interrupt. So I don't have Thundershock, and I don't have Guardian's Cudgel or the other Cap Totem talent augmenter there. So just keep that in mind. So if you don't want to use Creation Core, you could maybe go into the more CC talents or go into more healing talents. It's really up to you. And lastly, so for going the points to get into Nature's Swiftness, I actually chose Graceful Spirit over Mana Spring. However, if you're having mana problems in this dungeon, you should probably just go Mana Spring instead of Graceful Spirit. But having having a shorter cooldown on Spirit Walker's Grace is useful for both the Asaad fight as well as the Volteris fight, so just keep that in mind. Okay, moving over to the right side of the tree, the only thing I'm going to mention here is that I play Reach, not Flow, for this dungeon. That's because most of the boss fights have, well, maybe except for the first one, but the Volteris and Asaad, which are the hard boss fights, have really like high rot damage in their parts, so Ancestral Reach is probably the way to go for that. I also have 2 points in Ancestral Vigor. That's because I'm doing this on a higher key. This is specifically a 24, but if you're doing it on like a 22 or lower, maybe even a 23, depending on how confident you are, you could take that point out of Ancestral Vigor and put it either into Stormkeeper or maybe Wave Speaker's Blessing, or wherever else you feel it would be warranted. One more thing before we get into the fight, there is an archaeology glyph or like a archaeology artifact, I guess, that you can buy, and you can actually use it in this dungeon. It's kind of expensive, at least on my server. It's like around 15-20k. It's called the Tolvir's Hieroglyph, and you can actually use that at a certain point in the dungeon. Just go and Google it if you need to, and it will basically gives you some passive mana regen, and it actually makes quite a difference. So if you're going in here and you have lots of gold and you're nervous about your mana, you can actually go into and like get that hieroglyph, and you can use that, and it will give you some nice mana regen throughout the whole dungeon. And that could also give you an opportunity to not use both Mana Spring and Resurgence if you feel like you're relying on those. Okay, so with all of that being said, let's jump into the fight. Alright, so just keep in mind there is an ability tracker on the top left, and I've slowed down the video a bit just to make it easier for you guys to see what I'm doing and when I'm doing it, as well as make it easier for myself to narrate it to you guys. All right, so this boss, I wanted to make a video for like a guide for a while, but I didn't, like I had it down, but I didn't have it down enough to be able to like tell people what to do. I think I have it now. So just keep in mind, you can either go into this fight with a plan, or you can go in and sort of do it reactively. I like to do it with a mix of both. I have a general plan of what I'm going to do, but I also, you know, play it reactively depending on what happens and who gets targeted by what and how long we take to kill the stars, all that stuff. Okay, so going into the fight, immediately what you're going to want to do is get as many riptides out as you possibly can on the group, as well as a primordial wave. And then you're going to want to put a healing rain down as well. And this is all going to be right before the ad comes up, and then put a cloudburst down too. And what that's going to do is, if you have your 4-set bonus, that's going to make your next healing wave cleave from that primordial wave do a huge amount of healing on the group because of the 4-piece buff bonus. In addition to that, if you're using Spectre Shock's weak aura, which counts your undulation charges, and once again, huge shout out to Spectre Shock, it's an amazing weak aura. You can actually, you know, plan your count on 2, and then when you give your primordial wave healing wave, that undulation buff is going to count for all of the healing waves on the group, which is
Afflicted.
amazing. So that in combination with the 4-piece buff just gives like a huge healing wave that's going to top the group and fill your cloudburst totem with like a lot of healing. So you're going to want to do that pretty much for every star that you have a primordial wave up if you can. Other than that, I'm not actually using any cooldowns on this first one. We don't have Lust yet, so if you're lusting on the first one, that's even better option not to use one. But I think just because you have so much time to set up at the beginning, you shouldn't need a cooldown for that. All right, going into the second one, I usually use Ancestral Guidance. Yeah, there it goes. So Ancestral Guidance, once again, get your primordial wave out. You know, healing rain and cloudburst if you can. This fight is really about setting yourself up. So you'll see for that time, I didn't quite set myself up in time. It was fine because I had Ancestral Guidance, but theoretically you could probably do almost every star without using cooldowns if you set yourself up properly. And, you know, be really preemptive about it. But that being said, it's harder said than done just because of what's happening and trying to get DPS in and all that stuff. All right, you should try to use at least one cooldown for every phase of 2 stars. Don't use a cooldown for every single star, because then you're going to run out for when you actually need it. Just, you know, try to use your cooldowns either when you plan to use them or if you're in like a tight spot. So for this one, you'll see I believe I don't use one. Nope, and I get my primordial wave right up in the middle, so I'm going to use that. And also remember, if you have to jump for static cling, a good way to mitigate that
Afflicted.
Impacting your healing is to
Afflicted.
use Spirit Walker's Grace, or to use Nature's Swiftness, and then you can, you know, do that while you jump. What can make this really tough is if your group is not able to kill the stars fast enough, and then you're dealing with that in addition to the chain lightning, in addition to the static cling. So hopefully you have a group that can kill them pretty speedy. And once again, I will have a version of this fight after. I maybe won't do it at slowed down just because I don't want this video to be too long. But I'll show you when it can be a little bit tougher when your group isn't as quick. So we had Lust come up for this one, so we're actually using it. I think this is like the 4th and 5th star, I believe. Either way, that basically counts as a cooldown. That's going to make it really easy. I also chose to use Ascendance here as well, just because, you know, Ascendance paired with Lust is great. That's an awesome combo. And I figured, you know, why not? There's no sense in holding all of your cooldowns, because then you're going to get to the end of the fight with nothing. And I saw this run was going really smooth, so I figured there was no harm in that. Alright, and as you see, once again, setting myself for that next star, I have my Cloudburst down, I put my Healing Rain down, I have Riptides on the entire group, and I see that my Primordial Wave is about to come up, and I see that I have 2 charges of my Undulation from Spectre Shock's weak aura, so that in combination with everything is going to, once again, give a massive heal to everybody, and that's going to feed the Cloudburst. You'll also see I use Nature's Swiftness to get that Healing Wave out for the Primordial Wave, because, you know, Healing Wave is kind of slow, so if you ever need a really quick AoE group heal, Primordial Wave and then Nature's Swiftness your Healing Wave, and that's a great option to heal everybody really quick. Just a funny piece of advice, because I once really messed this up. I was actually doing a 24 2 weeks ago on a Tyrannical, and we got to this point. We were pretty much going to, it was a tight timer, but we were going to kill the boss. Everything looked great. And then towards the end of the fight, in the triangle, I backstepped just a little bit to try and be able to hit the boss better, and I stepped out of the triangle and I died. And then it was just like a cascade of horrible events happening, and we ended up wiping, and it was really embarrassing. So just with that triangle, don't let your guard down. Make sure you're always in there and that you don't accidentally step out of it, because it's really embarrassing. All right, going into this probably somewhat last two set of stars. I had my primordial wave set up for the first set, or for the first star, so I didn't need to use a cooldown. But for the second set, I'm pretty sure that I use Healing Tide, just because I have it up there and there's no reason not to. And then for the very last star, if needed, I have both Slink and Ancestral Guidance. Keep in mind, Slink is a great cooldown for the star, but it's an even better cooldown for when somebody gets Chain Lightning during the star and they're like, you're unable to keep them up. Chain Light, or the Spirit Link, will help the person with the Chain Lightning survive if they're able to kind of stand in it without clipping people with the AoE circle. So yeah, there you go. I have Healing Tide. I also have Neltharian's Call to Dominance, which gives me a massive intellect buff while I use Healing Tide. So that is like a really great cooldown for me here, and I can just sort of blast with my regular heals, and that fills up my Cloudburst as well. All right, we're pretty much done here. We may get one more star, but the boss is low enough that we're gonna kill him anyways. We're gonna ignore it. I think we kill him before this supremacy phase is even over, which is great. So once again, this is a super clean run, probably one of the cleanest runs I've had, and it's on a 24, so that's nice. But it doesn't always go this smooth. So with hopefully that was really helpful for you, but now let's watch a run that is a little bit less smooth. Once again, I'm not going to slow it down as much. We're just going to go through it. I'm going to, name out some of the mistakes that I made, as well as some of the things that the group could have done better as well. Okay, here we go for round two. First, just note that I should have mentioned this before. There is a warrior in both groups. A warrior is an excellent pick for this dungeon on a Tyrannical week, just because for this last boss they are able to spell reflect the Chain Lightning, which is great. It doesn't even have to be targeted on them. They can just run into the circle of whoever has it and to spell reflect, which does some nice damage to the boss. Okay, so you'll see this run was done before the run that I just went through, so I actually learned quite a bit from doing this one. And also I was a little bit calmer, because once you've done something a couple of times, you get better at it, and you're just a little bit more relaxed. So you'll see I don't play this one as well, which is probably the reason why it didn't go as smoothly. But also, unfortunately, the DPS wasn't as great on this dungeon, so unfortunately we didn't kill the stars as fast as the run that we just went through. And you'll see how that plays out a little bit later, because ideally you want your Cloudburst recall to line up with kind of when the star is about to die. So if you recall your Cloudburst and there's still 30-40% or higher on the ad, you can find yourself in a little bit of trouble. That being said, if you're taking Totemic Recall and Creation Core, that can maybe help out if you have to put it, if you have to use more than one Cloudburst on a single ad, but hopefully it does not come to that. Oh, sorry, and something I should have mentioned that's very important. If you find yourself in a situation where the person targeted by Chain Lightning has low health because it's during an ad or whatever, like I said before, you can use Slink, but another great option is if you've been, healing, if you've been using your healing rotation good in the way that I've told you with Spectre Shock's Weak Aura and using your 4-piece ability to your benefit of Primordial Wave and just, using High Tide and all that stuff, you should have really, really big Cloudbursts. So if anyone has really low health with a Chain Lightning and they're about to die, you can recall that Cloudburst usually if the timing is good, and that will top them up. It'll probably top the entire group up, and then they'll be able to take that Chain Lightning hit without dying. Hopefully they have a personal for it as well, but sometimes you get really unlucky in this fight and he'll target the same person 2 or 3 times in a row with a Chain Lightning, and that can be very frustrating. Which once again, great idea to bring a warrior to this fight, because if they get targeted by it, they will not take any damage, which is which is fantastic because on higher keys, that chain lightning pretty much almost one shot. So if anyone even has like 20 or 30% health missing, they will die. So just be careful of that. And then obviously if you get targeted by chain lightning, Astral Shift is your best friend, as well as a health pot. So once again, if you get targeted twice in a row, 3 times in a row, a health pot is a good last minute oh crap button that you can use to save yourself. All right, so we're pretty good here. I think towards the end of the fight, I actually died because of a chain lightning, and I think I actually didn't take my own advice, and I don't use a health pot when I should have. We'll see here. I think it happens right after this. But as you'll see for this fight, there were a lot of times where the whole group was like around 20%, so it was a little bit rough. We killed the ad just in time, and if the ad, kept going, we probably would have died. So it's a little bit of both. It's me. I could have healed a little bit better, probably, but also I think the DPS could have gotten these stars down a little bit quicker as well than they did. All right, here's my untimely death. Yeah, so if I just health potted there, I would have been absolutely fine. So if you get the chain lightning, and it's important, don't panic. You want to have a clear mind, because I even know to use a health pot there. Like, that's been my strat on this boss for a long time. But for some reason, my brain was like, oh my god, what do I do? Just spam healing surge, when all I had to do was press my health pot button. So just once again, try to have a plan for that. And then you'll see there, oddly enough, I just got the chain lightning again. So had that boss lived a little bit longer, I might have died there. And had he had more health, we might have actually wiped and not been able to finish it. So that would have been really unfortunate. However, sometimes that does happen. Sometimes you do get lots of chain lightnings on the same person. So it's good to go into this fight with a couple of battle reses at the very least. But anyways, I hope this guide helped you out. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section. I also put the talent import string from the beginning of this video in the details as well, so you can just copy that directly. Just once again, I advise, if it's not an afflicted week, don't take poison dispel and don't take curse dispel. Just use those points elsewhere. Anyways, if this guide was helpful for you, please subscribe and like. I actually just hit 1K subscribers, so huge thank you to anyone who's been watching my videos, subscribing to my channel, and especially for the people who've been here since the beginning, since the first since the launch of Dragonflight and when I started making these videos. Big appreciate you guys. That's the reason I make them, so thank you. And of course, I'll see you next time.